Good evening. How is everybody this evening? Wow, that's all I can say is here we are in June. Graduation for the seniors is coming up, and I'm really thankful that all of you could come out this evening. I guess to get started, the first thing I'd like to say is if you have any cell phones on you, could you please mute them during their presentations this evening. Let me get started. Welcome to North Bend High School. My name is Michael Boyer. I am an engineering teacher here at North Bend High School, and the students that you're going to see present tonight are students that I've been working with all year in the senior capstone course of our Engineering Academy. Our Engineering Academy is part of a program called Project Lead the Way. So I would like to start with a little bit of background information as we get started here. Our program is a part of Project Lead the Way, which is a 5-course sequence designed to introduce students to the engineering process. And in their sophomore year, they take 2 courses related to Introduction to Engineering Design and Principles of Engineering. And this kind of gets them started looking at what mechanical engineering is and the engineering physics behind what we do. I teach a digital electronics course their junior year, and we also have a computer integrated manufacturing course. And then the senior course that we have in the Engineering Academy is called Engineering Design and Development. And this is the course that you're going to see this evening, the students presenting all of their work to you. So the course itself is set up around the engineering design process. So it's designed to give the students the opportunity to develop a solution to a real world problem, whatever that problem may be. And the students this year have tackled many things relating to the environment, energy, and healthcare that you're going to see. But they follow through this 6-step process, and we are now down at step 6, presenting their results. So they're really excited to share with you their work this evening. Now, I've also added on to this and had the fortunate opportunity to add a nanotechnology component to the engineering design and development course sequence. And nanotechnology is not commonly taught at the high school. And for me, when I first learned about it in 2003, I had no clue about it. I heard about it, I heard of what nanotechnology is, but really didn't know what it meant. So I applied to a summer research program at Drexel University, and I got accepted. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, tech ed teacher, I'm getting accepted to this really cool engineering program at Drexel. And I got paired up with a professor named Dr. Frank Coe, who later I found out worked with Alan McDermott, who won the Nobel Prize 3 years prior for conductive polymers and electrospinning of nanofibers. I had no clue. Oh gosh. So when I saw this in my email, Dr. Coe's like, Mike, read this and familiarize yourself with the process. And when you get familiar, then we can get started. You could hear me swallow from across the room. I read this paper of like electrostatic fabrication of ultrafine conducting fibers, polyaniline polyethylene oxide blends. And at the time, I didn't pronounce it properly. It was pretty bad. And I'm reading through the abstract, I'm like, this is crazy. I have no clue what this is. What am I getting into? And I was afraid. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And my wife, God bless her, was like, no, you got to do this. It's going to be a really cool opportunity. And so I applied. And while I was there, I learned about things like material science and how material science is in everything. So when we look at what material science is, it's a field of engineering. But like electrical engineering, we study electronics. In mechanical engineering, we study mechanics. In civil engineering, we study architecture, buildings, things of that nature. But in material science, what do we study? And we realize that, well, everything's made of materials. So it must be an all-encompassing field of engineering, not just a small little bit with that. And so we learned that material science is the investigation of the relationship between how we process materials, the structure, properties, and the performance of them. So material scientists learn how to tune the structure of materials to get them to do the things we want. Now, back in the 50s and 60s, we were learning metallurgy, ceramics, things of that nature. Today, we're using nanotechnology, which I'll talk about in a minute. We'll see how this comes together. And this little picture here, I don't know if you know what's in those vials, but it's all the same material, but they're a different color. And the reason why they're a different color is because they have different sizes down to the nanometer scale. We'll talk about that. That's all gold. Particles of gold solution in a solution. And they change color because of their size. So we can do anything we want as material scientists. So thermodynamics are some forces that we use and theories that we use to understand how we can apply these things. So when we want to synthesize something, we can apply forces to them. What kind of forces would you apply to something and say, oh, well, if I hit something, that's mechanical. But temperature is also a force. And believe it or not, light is a force. You can change the properties of materials by using light. And you're going to see photochromic nanofibers tonight, which are pretty interesting. And I'm really excited for you guys to see that process as well. So we take these forces, we run them through a process, and then we can come up with various applications. And you're going to see tonight how the students do that. So we say, what forces can we apply to a material to change its properties in a way to do what we want it to do? Now, the nanotechnology side of this is where things come together now and we realize, all right, well, what is nanotechnology? And we think of, well, I think of physics and chemistry and biology. These are sciences that we're all familiar with. And is nanotechnology a science? And I say yes and no, because nanotechnology is more than just a field of science. It encompasses everything because it deals with measuring at scale, a measurement. Nano is a Greek word meaning dwarf. However, it's also a Systems International unit of measure to mean 1/billionth of something. So when we talk about nanotechnology, creation of functional materials, using material science, devices and systems through the control of matter on the nanometer length scale, 1 to 100 nanometers, we can exploit novel or new properties by using these properties together. So a nanometer is 1/billionth of a meter. That's hard to imagine. Could you imagine $1 billion sitting in front of you right now? I couldn't. Or 1/billionth of a dollar. That's even crazier, right? So when we look at that, it's kind of hard to imagine. Well, if we try to scale it to things we know, like a head of a pin is about 1 million nanometers, or ragweed pump, 20,000 nanometers, or maybe, this one I like, take a hair off your head and measure the width of it, 100,000 nanometers. That's crazy. The students here are working at the nanometer scale down to 100 nanometers. Now, just real quick, the frequency of light, the bandwidth, and if you look at the cycle, it's 400 nanometers. We're working at things that are smaller than the frequency of light. Light can't even see it. So we can't use regular microscopes to see them. So how do we see at the nanoscale? We use a scanning electron microscope. Has anybody ever heard of one of those before, an SEM? I see some hands going up. So a scanning electron microscope doesn't use light. It uses electrons because they're much smaller than the particles of light that we see. However, look at the cost. $250,000 to $1 million plus. Whoops. It's a little outside my budget. I've been trying to figure out how to mortgage my home, and I couldn't even pay for part of that. So I'm like, all right, we'll figure this out. But they're an amazing instrument. Well, the students this year have had the opportunity to actually work with one. Hitachi makes a desktop one. And they actually let us borrow it for not a week, not 2 weeks, but over 2 months. And what's really even cooler, we have one in the gym tonight for you guys to actually see one in operation. If you want to take a hair off your head and see what it looks like, we can show you at the nanoscale. We can do anything. It's really awesome. So we're going to see that tonight when we get started. So now the last thing is, how do I introduce nanotechnology to the students? How are they working? How are they functionalizing materials? How are they making them smaller so that we can actually do something with them? And one of the things I learned with Dr. Koh and all of the research that he does at Drexel was a process called electrospinning. And to electrospin, you need 3 things. You need a high voltage power supply, you need a syringe, and you need a collection plate. So this syringe is filled with a polymer, a liquid polymer. So you can imagine shampoo bottle plastic dissolved in a liquid. And over here we have a 0 to 30,000 volt power supply connected to positive, and ground or negative voltage connected here. When I turn the power on, you're going to see this Taylor cone form. What that's happening is as the voltage increases, we're stretching the polymer. We're applying electrical force to that polymer, and it jets out and lands, in this case, on a random mat. Now the students say, well, could we align those nanofibers? Could we change what those nanofibers do? But you're going to see in the gym tonight, the nanofibers these students electrospin look like this. They look like a sheet of paper or a tissue. But when we put them under the SEM, it's a whole different world. Because now we can functionalize these. What if we embed particles so that way they trap toxins? Or what if we change the orientation so they can act like water filters and air filters? Possibilities are endless. And so when the students are given the opportunity to dream, not just be given a lab, but actually design their own, it's amazing. I'm in awe every single day of the work my students do. I'm so blessed to have this opportunity, and so thankful. And you'll see some of the research they're doing this year. And here's an example of one of our electrospinning stations. So that was a demo. Here's our power supply on top. Here's our polymer syringe. And over here is our collection plate. And it all has to deal with forces. High voltage here, ground here, pulls the polymer out. How did the program begin? How did it start? Just a little bit of background. Well, I fell in love with research. If you can't tell, I love doing this. I love discovery, and I love going through processes. So I developed a program while I was in Drexel called the Future is N.E.A.R, Nanotechnology, Education, and Research. And, but I thought, well, a vision without resources is just a hallucination. So if I don't have the money or the funding, how can I develop a program? And so I went out and I sought ING Direct, Toshiba, Dominion, Toyota, the North Penn Ed Foundation here at North Penn School District, which is absolutely amazing in giving us funding to help us, has given a combined total my first year to run this program of over $20,000. And the first year was in 2005. Every year since then, we've been able to sustain the program with various donations and grant money to keep this going. It's absolutely a blessing. So in 2005, here's a picture of a couple of my students right now. They're looking at what is electrospinning. And so they said, wow, well, what if we change the voltage? What does it do to the polymers? Today, I teach that in 3 class periods. We spent a whole year the first year. That was 3 class periods at best. And now, just as one example of our teams, what if I take these nanofibers, what if I squeeze them to make them produce a voltage from them? Could I put them in clothing? Could I put them in the floor? And you're going to hear about that research from one of the teams tonight. And that's called piezoelectricity. And students have actually taken plastic, squeeze it, makes a voltage. It's awesome. It's the next step in new energy generation harvesting. We can't wait to share it with you tonight. So, the research papers that once scared me, here's some examples of the papers that the students learned how to read this year. Started off the same way I did, scared, nervous, oh my gosh, what is this? And now are reading these, highlighting them, understanding them, and designing their own experiments from the research they're reading. They've become the giants. They started off the year the dwarves standing on the shoulder of a giant, and now they themselves are the giants to pass on their research to next year's dwarves. So I'm really excited to share that with you. Thank you very much. I'd now like to share and pass over the research to our first research team, which is going to be P squared, piezoelectrics. So gentlemen, if you guys would like to come up, please.
Good evening, we're P squared. I'm Eric Rothenberger.
I'm Joe Mayer.
And I'm Tom McNevin. So I need you all to do something for me. I need you all to look around the room and think about what you're seeing. You may notice the lights, the stage, or the people in front of you. What you may not have noticed is energy. Energy is all around us. Not only is energy all around us, but it is constantly being wasted. Einstein once said, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form of energy to another. So why don't we capitalize on all that energy that is being wasted and transfer it to a form of energy in which we can actually use? What if I told you there were ways that this could be possible? We're about to show you just one of those ways.
Now I'm sure most of you have seen one or most of the pictures behind me. They can be classified as transducers and or energy harvesters. Now a transducer is anything that takes one form of energy and transforms it into another. And an energy harvester then stores energy that you can then use for other purposes. These are just some of the more popular types of these devices, and we set out this year to figure out how to make different kinds and ones that you could use on a daily basis. So we focused on piezoelectrics. And a piezoelectric is anything that you apply a mechanical force to that then transforms it into an electrical force. And different types of piezoelectrics are piezoceramics, piezopolymers, and piezotabs. And 2 things that have naturally occurring piezoelectricity in them are dry bones and quartz. And 2 uses of piezoelectrics that there are for sensors and energy harvesting. 2 types of sensors that you could use are record players or microphones. And for the record player, there are small bumps on the vinyl disc, and the needle on the record player has a small piezoelectric. So it senses the bumps and transforms that into audio that you can then listen to. And the microphone takes the sound waves from your voice and converts it into digital audio that then speakers to an audience. And a company by the name of N.E.A.R has been using piezoelectrics for energy harvesting by putting it into roads, railways, and walkways.
Now, at the beginning of the year, we were able to look at a pre-manufactured piezoelectric tab made by Measurement Specialities, and we were able to find that on an average flick, you can generate about 87.4 volts. But we realized when doing this, to get the highest response, instead of doing a straight pressure downward like you would with your foot onto the ground, the flicking motion, like you see in the picture behind me, gives you the highest response. So what we did this year is we created a piezoelectric tab that gives the highest response when you apply a hitting motion downwards onto it. We were able to do this by using a substance known as polyvinylidene fluoride and electrospinning that. And then we took that fiber, put it between two plastic laminate strips, which were painted with silver on it that acted as our electrodes. The electrodes were able to gather the voltage from the fiber, and we were allowed to use that voltage for other applications. The voltage we got, on average, was about 36 volts per hit. Now the difference between the two tabs is because we electrospun ours, we have the ability to make it any size or any shape that we want it, and we can put that anywhere. And because ours gives us the highest response when we apply the hitting motion downwards onto it, it's better for energy harvesting, while the Measurement Specialities tab is a lot better for sensing.
Now we're purposely showing you the same pictures that you've seen at the beginning of this presentation. You may have been wondering what these pictures have to do with anything. But imagine the bottom of your shoes, the top of your roof, under the railway, or inside the hallway. There's this piezoelectric material, and all the energy that was once wasted can now be harvested and used to power other things. Please join us at the gym for any questions or advice that you may have had during our presentation. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and please welcome to the stage N.E.A.R.
Hello, my name is Sam Cook.
My name is Joey Sachs.
And I'm Adam Hilliard, and we make up Team N.E.A.R.
As humans, our bodies can produce 350,000 joules per hour. Now that's a lot of energy, but our bodies aren't that efficient, and much of the energy gets wasted and dissipated as heat, which is why you can see the outline of a human in an infrared camera such as this. But how much energy is this? This is about the same it would take to run a 100-watt light bulb all the time. But this isn't the only example of a place in society where heat's wasted. If you felt the asphalt on a hot and sunny day, you know how it absorbs the sun's rays and converts it to heat. But after that, it just gets dissipated as heat, and we don't put it to good use. But what if we could find a way to turn it into a form that we could use to power the streetlights, like electricity? Another example is incandescent light bulbs, where typically 95% of the electricity used is dissipated as heat instead of light. We must make it a priority to harvest these renewable sources of energy, because as you can see, we've been relying on non-renewable fossil fuels throughout most of the world history.
66% of all the energy we get from fossil fuels is wasted to heat energy. One way we can capitalize off this heat energy is through thermoelectric plates, which when exposed to different temperatures produce an electrical charge. Another energy that's wasted in our society is kinetic energy. A way to capitalize off of that is through piezoelectric plates, which
Piezoelectric plates can be implemented into roofs and sidewalks to produce a voltage also.
As you can see here, a piezoelectric tab is a tab that when squeezed, moved, or heated, generates an electrical charge. although that charge can't be immediately utilized because it's an AC current. We usually use DC current.
All right, here we have 2 labs that we did during the year. The first one is we took the piezo tab and flipped it to create voltage that we stored in the energy harvesting circuit, and it was just generating direct current from that. And for the second experiment, we discharged all the voltage that we got into an LED, and we actually have this one as a demonstration that you will see in the gym later on. This here is a graph, and it just shows you how the AC voltage is going back and forth significantly. And this is another picture of our energy harvester, but this time it's hooked up to a solar cell. These are 2 ideas that we have. They are out in the market right now, but dye-sensitized solar cells use organic materials to create a solar cell, and it generates voltage the same way, it just uses organics. And for the flexible solar cells, this would just be used if you're trying to do something that's not on a solid plate. What's next? Our vision is to have a future in which human society is able to capitalize off of all the unused energy, such as heat, and this would make for a more efficient and greener society. Thank you. We will see you in the gym hopefully later on tonight, and the next team is Chroma Current.
Hello, good evening. We are Chroma Current. I'm Niall Casey.
And I'm Nick Bonsignori.
Well, this is a cup. Well, duh. But this cup happens to be a little special. When you pour water into it, it changes colors. I'm sure many of you have seen that before, and you're like, why is this so cool? To these 2 weirdos standing up here. Well, it happens to be when you have a device in your pocket that can display a multitude of colors at one time. I'm talking about your phones. I'm sure you all have them here, or where else would they be? But we have a major problem with them. This is that problem. I'm sure many of you have had that happen to you before. If you took a poll of this high school, I'm sure you would find a lot of students have dropped their phones and cracked them. And it's a fact of life. If you drop your phone, you'll crack it. This goes for other display devices as well. TVs and computers fall victim to the same thing.
So most of your display devices are made up of either liquid crystal displays or active matrix organic LEDs. And so liquid crystal displays, or LCDs, can be found in computers, TV screens, and even some phones, but they require a relatively thick backlighting layer, which means that they're heavier and bulkier. And the newest phones, like the Galaxy S5, use AMOLED screens, which actually have an organic compound that emits its own light, which cuts out the backlighting layer. And while these phones are constrained to glass like the iPhone, there are prototypes to fix that and make the phone more flexible. But we wanted to come up with a different solution to the glass screen. So we decided that we would research nanofiber fabrics that could replace the glass screen with a flexible, lightweight solution. And to this end, we studied chromic materials, which means color-changing materials. And the way these work are when you apply a force to the material, the color changes. So for example, the cup is a thermochromic material, meaning when you apply heat to it, it will change colors. Photochromics require the force of light to change the color. And our research focused on electrochromic materials, which require the force of electricity to change the color. So over the course of the year, we ran several experiments to deepen our knowledge of electrochromic materials. The first one involved polymer dispersed liquid crystal displays. So PDLCs can be found in some consumer products like dynamic glass windows that can be found in some higher-end cars. And what we did is we purchased a PDLC film and designed and constructed a device that allowed others to interact with the film. Our next experiment is called the Prussian blue electrochromism experiment. And in this experiment, we deposited the Prussian blue material on a conductive slide and showed that changing the direction of the current actually changed the color of the material. And both of these will be demonstrated in the gym after this presentation.
Now, if we had more time to continue our research, we would start by refining a previously failed experiment that we had, and that was aimed towards creating a fabric that could conduct electricity, much like wires, but at the same time retain its flexibility and weight. To this end, we would then embed particles, molecules of electrochromic material into the fabric, therefore creating a color-changing fabric. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering what are the possible applications of such things. And, well, we hope that our electrochromic fabric could be used in interactive posters, much like you see in Harry Potter.
First responders could have access to a first aid database without having to rely on unwieldy tablets and computers.
Our military could bring home more of our troops by shielding them with active camouflage.
Theaters could get rid of those pesky projectors, enhancing your experience and removing shadow work.
And your neighbor wouldn't have to have that ugly green midlife crisis color on his car forever. And the parents everywhere could save money not having to buy their kids replacement phones for those who crack their phone screens. Thank you, and up next is Hydras.
About $3 or 70% of every gallon of gasoline that you buy for your car gets used to heat your engine instead of propelling you where you need to go.
I'm Nick Haddad, and this is Colin McKernan. Together, we formed the team Hydras, and this year our project was looking into making gasoline engines more efficient. The way we looked into this was an alternative fuel. How many people here drove here in a gasoline-powered car? What if we could tell you that you could save money and save the Earth with a more ecological and economical way to get around?
First thing we did was look into potential alternatives to the internal combustion engine. What we found was a company that I'm sure you're all familiar with is Tesla. They have a very famous car right now that's a plug-in electric vehicle. And we looked into this, and we think that the problem with this is that it takes a very long time to charge the batteries. As well, if you don't want to charge like at your house, where it would take 12 to 13 hours, you can go to one of Tesla's provided like supercharging stations. And the problem with that is even though they take only 30 minutes to charge, they are very far out of the way and they're sporadically placed throughout the nation. So it's a huge inconvenience to have to charge at one of these stations. So another thing a few of you may be familiar with is the hydrogen fuel cell. And what this is it's not an alternative to the electric car, but it's an alternative to batteries, which is the weak link in electric vehicles. So the benefit of this is you no longer have that long plug-in time to charge the batteries, but rather they're charged by hydrogen, and the hydrogen fuel cell extracts electric potential energy from there and charges the batteries. So it takes very short time to refuel, but the problem with these is they're extremely expensive. A car with a hydrogen fuel cell powered electric car could cost upwards of $150,000 to $200,000.
So the average automobile that we use today is between 20 and 30% efficient. Now the problem with that is it's 70% inefficient. So if we could look into a way to make it more efficient to use, cheaper to operate, and better for the earth, that's what our project was aimed to do. Now to do this, we looked into the roots of how the automobile engine works. And there's a piston that moves up and down in a cylinder that is forced to do that by the explosion of gasoline. Now, since the battery technology was not with the technology for the electric vehicle, and since alternative fuels seemed like the best option, we chose hydrogen. Now, the reasons that hydrogen is a better fuel to use are listed right here. We can take a look at this, and this is why we decided that hydrogen was the best option.
Hydrogen, it has multiple properties that far exceed the performance of gasoline. It has a very high, or very short quenching distance. It has high flame speed, diffusion rate, low ignition energy. What all this means is that it can produce a better, more homogeneous solution in the combustion chamber and explode and detonate more completely and more efficiently and get all of that potential energy that's stored in hydrogen and use it to actually turn the pistons in your engine.
Now the engine that we used for our research was a small model aviation engine. We chose this because it's a small displacement single cylinder engine that allowed us to take a look at the properties of hydrogen explosive in a small scale that we can take into the classroom and take a look at that. Now, with our engine, it took us a couple tries to get it started. It hadn't been used in a long time, and that gave us an opportunity to take a more in-depth look into the carburation system that the engine used, which then allowed us to have a better idea of how to outfit our engine with the hydrogen. This helped us understand how we can outfit the hydrogen system into the existing cars that we use today. That way, instead of having to purchase a new vehicle, you just have to spend about $100 to turn your current vehicle into a hydrogen-powered car. That way, instead of filling up at a gas station, you can just buy hydrogen tanks and swap them out like a propane tank on a grill. This seemed like a better option for us, so this is where we went with it.
Now, unfortunately, we ran out of time and money before we could actually get the engine to successfully run on hydrogen gas. However, we did get it to run on its intended fuel, and we're very close. So instead, what we did was we chose to theoretically prove, as the next best alternative, how it could work if the engine was to run on hydrogen. So we did that by getting the ideal stoichiometric hydrogen to air ratio that would produce the most efficient and completely detonating explosion in the engine.
So we were able to mathematically prove our concept, and what we found is that hydrogen is not only a cheaper and better fuel to use, but we can get more power from it. So this is obviously the better choice to go with. In the gym, after our presentation, you'll be able to see the actual engine that we use, and we can go a little bit more in depth into our research and what we found. Thank you for your time, and next up is Encapsulation.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's everyone? Have you ever come home from work or from school and you just had this really bad headache? So what do? You take an ibuprofen, and within minutes, the headache is gone. Works like a charm, right? But the question is, do you know how that headache is gone? Well, you see, this is where I come to the picture. Hi, my name is Mohammed, and my research effort throughout the course of the year was on microencapsulation. You might ask yourself, what is encapsulation? That's a process in which you take a liquid, a solid, or a gas active ingredient and embed it into a material which acts as the membrane to protect the active ingredient from its environment. There are two types of encapsulation. There's macro and there's micro. The only difference is that the voltage is being applied. In macroencapsulation, no voltage is being used because you're manually doing it with the use of gravity and a little bit of force. Here are some examples of macroencapsulation, the beams. And this is the testing apparatus. And for microencapsulation, a voltage is applied, and depending on the voltage, the lower the voltage, the bigger the beads, the higher the voltage, the smaller the beads. Here are some more examples of microencapsulation. And this is just a diagram of what an encapsulated bead will look inside. The process that was used to encapsulate the beads was suspension polymerization. This is when the polymer is suspended over the bath, and what happens is the polymer is dropped into the bath, and once in the bath, it encapsulates, and this is the end result. And this is a microencapsulated yeast cells. Materials used was calcium chloride, sodium alginate, yeast, and PCM. What the calcium chloride does is it acts as the bath, or the second layer of the encapsulation process. The sodium alginate acts as the first layer that layers the active ingredient. So when it's dropped into the bath, it creates the second layer. And the active ingredients that was used was yeast cells as a proof of concept. And then I moved on to PCM. Here are some SEM pictures that I took with the Hitachi SEM. Pretty cool pictures. As you see the picture in the middle, the beads are kind of big, but in the future we'd like to make the beads smaller. And for future work, the encapsulation process can be taken to the medical field. As I was talking about ibuprofen. Ibuprofen works by taking tiny microparticles that flows through the bloodstream and into the brain. But what if we took microparticles and encapsulated them so that they'd be delivered straight to the brain? Then headaches would just be gone within 6 to 7 minutes. We conclude that the encapsulation process works and can be used in the medical field. Further research needs to be done to improve it. Thank you for coming. Hope to see you guys in the gym for a demonstration.
So energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can change, it can be lost. That was the basis of our research to see if we could save energy. I'm Andrew Judge.
I'm Patrick Murray.
And I'm Ahmed Hassan.
And we were Nanophase, and we looked into how to save energy in our homes. Now, what if there was a material that you could put in your walls, and it would take the heat from an area, store it, and stabilize the temperature of it? This would reduce the amount of energy needed to run a heating and air conditioning unit. This saved energy would save energy, also money, and you'd be able to use these for other things. Adding this into your home would save 20 to 30% of your energy bill and increase efficiency and reduce the amount of work needed to run the heating and air conditioning unit. We've been working with a polymer that actually does this, and the name of this polymer is phase change material, also known as PCM. What phase change material does, it takes the energy and stores it. And how does this work, you may be wondering. I'm going to hand it to Pat, he's going to tell you.
The PCM we worked with was an acrylic shell with a paraffin wax core, and when the temperature reached 73 degrees, the wax inside melted and it stored the heat. When the temperature dropped below 73 degrees, it went back to a solid and released the heat back, keeping the room at a constant temperature.
In the beginning of the year, we worked with phase change material that was available to us. We tried to test if the phase change material actually worked. To do this, we created a cardboard box, a very small box that has a small little lamp and a phase change material. With this, we were able to prove if phase change material actually worked or not. But due to the room's temperature being higher than the phase change material, we weren't able to prove this. We then moved on to embedding phase change material in nanofibers. We used different types of polymers and different percentages of PCM. And with the SEM, we were able to see all the nanofibers that you see here. These are all different pictures through the SEM of nanofibers we've done over the year. With this, we were able to successfully see that we were able to electrospin PCM material. We then moved on to microencapsulating phase material with encapsulate that you just saw. We were then, after a lot of trial and error, were able to microencapsulate successfully a phase change material.
So since the first box test didn't work because the room was actually warmer than the phase change point of the phase change material, so we developed a new box which would allow us to cool down the area, to get it below the melting point of the phase change, and then heat it back up with the heating pad so we can see what the phase point change temperature was. We then, after we found out what it was, we tried, our final goal was to make our own PCM at a cheaper cost. And so to do this, we took paraffin wax and put two different substances in it. One was aluminum oxide, the other was the phase change powder we had. Put them in an oven so you can uniformly uniformly heat up at a constant rate these two samples. And from that, we graphed them using the Blue Therm Duo thermocouples. And while we're still analyzing these graphs, we were trying to find out what's the best way to make our new phase change material to lower the phase change point.
And in the future, we're planning to work on a new phase change material that's more efficient and more better for construction and buildings. Thank you.
You can check out our oven test in the auditorium or the oxygen after for an 8 nanophase.
And up next is Thermosense.
Our partner group.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Molina.
I'm Eve Costin.
I'm Diaz.
And tonight we will be talking about phase change materials. We are Team Thermosense. So, how many of you think that you spend too much on your energy bill every single month? Pretty much everyone, right? So here's a sample energy bill that says that someone spends $500 on their electricity every single month. Now, what if you used a phase change material in your home and were able to reduce that price by 20 to 30%, saving about $150 a month? Who wouldn't like that? I think everyone would. Okay, so what is a phase change? It's pretty much just going from a solid to a liquid to a gas, or vice versa. So water is a good example when it goes from to ice or either to a water vapor. And here is a video showing paraffin wax just going from a liquid to a solid.
Now, our goal was to find a material that would work well as a phase change material. And we also wanted to make this material greener and more cost efficient than materials out on the market right now. So in order to do that, we first had to create a testing apparatus to see how the material would work with phase change and the difference, if there was a difference. The current state of the art is set by companies such as PureTemp and BASF, and they have many applications ranging from medical use to heating and cooling and storage. The evolution of our testing apparatus started with this really primitive cardboard box. We put tape for insulation, but it was still it wasn't efficient. And we had a light bulb inside with a little dish of phase change material and a thermometer to measure to see if there was any difference in temperature.
So the next step of the testing apparatus is that we upgraded the cardboard box to a plastic box where we have sample holders holding the reference material and the PCM. And we have thermocouples monitoring the temperature fluctuations with the materials. And also we added Peltier cooler and a heating pad to manipulate the temperature within the box.
So our final testing apparatus was this one. We added more insulation, and we also used the Blue Therm Duo programmer, which allowed us to collect our data and analyze it more efficiently than we previously had done so. And we also added a fan which would help circulate the air throughout the box, which was a problem that we had before.
So coconut oil. I'm sure most of you have this around your house. We thought that this would be an ideal phase change material to use for our purposes because its melting point is slightly above room temperature. Now we tried micro-encapsulating it with polycaprolactate, but what happened is because of the density issue, the coconut oil would sit on top of the polycaprolactate. So then we tried macro-encapsulating it with polypropylene glycol. And what happened with this is that we had it encapsulated, but our future work would consist of extracting those bubbles from the solution. Our future work would also consist of fine-tuning the PCM to meet the environment's needs. So say we have a spread and we spray the room full of phase change material. Basically, you have a room that maintains its own homeostasis, such as like the human body does. Yep. Make sure you check out our demos in the auxiliary gym. Next up is SafeSense. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chris Barr.
I'm Corey Bogus.
I'm Victoria Christensen.
Together we make SafeSense, and before we start our presentation, we'd just like to show you a quick video from an NFL game from last year. Pay attention to the top right corner of your screen.
Ooh. If you missed it, it'll play again. Okay, so I'm sure most of you have seen this before on Sunday watching football, but how many of you personally know somebody who has sustained a concussion? Show of hands. Whoa, that's a lot of people. Okay, so imagine that person having to rest their brain by missing weeks of school or work and suffering through the short-term symptoms such as headaches or nausea, or possible long-term symptoms such as dementia.
On average, 100,000 players in football alone experience a concussion every year. 60% of these concussions are caused from a head-to-head collision like you just saw.
On average, a person's head experiences 100 Gs of force in a 15 millisecond hit.
And the average rate of head-to-head collision in the NFL is 20 miles per hour. And that is equivalent to getting hit in the head with a sledgehammer.
To show the force that is equivalent here, we have a quick demonstration. Unfortunately, no one volunteered to be our head, so we had to use our mannequin friend Sal.
So, since force equals mass times acceleration, the faster Chris swings the sledgehammer, the more damage will be done to the head. And every time there's a hit, there's a transfer of energy. So in this demonstration, the energy is being transferred from the sledgehammer to the head.
3, 2, 1.
All right, so that we do not want for anybody here playing football, any of your children. That would just be horrible. Any of our friends. So how do we reduce this force? Because we don't want that at all. We could change the material. So according to the modulus of elasticity, it means that the harder the material, the less resistant to force. And that's what we don't want. So the more elastic the material, the more resilient it is, and the better it is for force.
A constant problem with the current football helmets that we have now is they have a hard outer shell that isn't very good at absorbing impact. After that outer layer, they have a very thick, hard foam that's used to absorb impact also. And then they have a small, thin layer, which is mainly for comfort, and an air bladder, which is made to fit the helmet of the player. The hard outer layer is similar to the car frames in 1960s cars, how they didn't have a crumple zone and all the forces were directed directly to the passenger and the driver of the car. So we thought, if car frames can evolve, why can't helmets? So to make the crumple zones in helmets, we looked into using layered padding, much similar to cell phone cases. This layered padding is used because it spreads the force out over a wide area rather than just a small point in a ripple effect.
So one of the products out for sale is the Rydell HIT system. It's comprised of accelerometers and the software that they developed. The way that it works is there's 6 accelerometers spread out through the lining of the helmet. And then on the sideline, there's a laptop with the software they created. So when a collision occurs on the field, the laptop shows the magnitude of the hit. So then the athletic trainers can decide whether or not the player needs to come off. So this year we tried to replicate this by using Arduino, which is a microcontroller, and a software similar to theirs, which is MATLAB, and that is available for demonstration in the aux gym.
So this system is awesome. I think we should all get it, so let's be a coach.
We have 100 returning players, and we're gonna buy this for our team. So here's a breakdown of the costs. The Rydell hit system is $1,000, and the desktop antenna that is integral to the entire process, it transfers the data from the helmet to the sideline response system, and that's sold separately, and I couldn't find the price on the website, so I think that means it's pretty expensive. So that will probably break your buck a little bit. And then for the 99 other kids that don't have a helmet yet, you can't just buy a helmet off the shelf. You have to buy the helmet that goes with the hit system, and that is the Rydell Revolution IQ helmet. That helmet is around $250 each without customization, so we want all our team to look good with the colors and the logo and everything. So all of that comes to around $25,000. And to give you a little perspective on what high schools can afford, our North Bend High School's budget for football equipment is only $8,000. That's not a lot at all. So high schools like these, or our upcoming team that wants to use this monitoring technology to monitor concussions, won't be able to because it's just too expensive. So we worked to combine detection and prevention in one helmet, because you can detect concussions all you want, but that's not going to reduce the risk of getting one. So we wanted to combine our protection technology to the detection technology that's already out there and combine it into one helmet.
So in order to create a system which is more cost effectively and more reliable for the consumer, we used accelerometers and Arduino interfacing software, MATLAB software, and XP wireless communication.
In terms of prevention, we took the already existing layer padding, we just innovated the different layers with a nanofiber shock absorbing layer, a shear thickening fluid layer, and a honeycomb foam layer, which will be demonstrated in the gym.
What's next for our research?
So for prevention technology, we're looking in incorporating this technology in more than just football. So incorporating it in lacrosse, hockey, any contact sport, even not traditional non-contact sports such as soccer. You could put accelerometers in a headband and monitor the impacts.
To create a threshold that is dependent on how many concussions you've received or the height and weight of the person using it.
And we'd also like to find a correlation between the modulus of elasticity of the material and the amount of force that is absorbed, so we can come up with the perfect combination to create the perfect padding that will absorb the most force and reduce the risk of having a concussion. So in the poster presentation, we would like all of you to come ask us questions, come see more information about concussions and our research this year.
You can also see us drop testing on materials. We have our shear thickening fluid on display and an SEM analysis of shock absorbing materials.
Thank you all for coming out. I would like to thank you for your time. Up next, you'll see the Epix Club at our school.
I'm staying with you for this one, because I am Victoria Christensen, in case you forgot, and I'm the Vice President of Epix Club.
And I'm Erin Molina once again, and I'm the President of the Epix Club.
So Epix Club stands for the Engineering Projects and Community Service Club. This is us. Pretty awesome. And we aim to introduce students at the high school from sophomore to senior year who are interested in engineering but might not have the connection that we do in the Engineering Academy. So we introduce them to the engineering design process and get them to solve problems in our world.
So we would like to take a moment to say thank you to Purdue University for giving us money to be able to do what we were able to do this year, and also the National Science Foundation and NanoHub, which also helped us with our adventures this year.
We decided to research the effect of heat on electronics because it's easy to do in our lab and it's easy to connect to. So the first thing we did was define the problem. And the problem could be a good thing because technology has advanced so things could get thinner, lighter, and more compact, so we could fit all of these things in our pocket. But the problem with that is that according to Moore's law, every 2 years, the number of transistors per unit area in your phone, your computer, your TV has doubled. So things have been getting smaller and thinner and lighter, but that is also, there's a problem with that with heat with those materials.
Now, heat and electronics do not go together. Heat is such a bad thing. It causes frustrated users, such as the woman on the left, and it just makes your electronics run less efficiently, and it can really damage them.
So current solutions for this are bulky cooling fans, heat sinks, messy thermal paste, and thermal interface materials, which is what we looked at in Epix Club.
So thermal interface materials are pretty much just a thin layer of fibers that are placed between the electrical component and a heat sink, and it just helps to remove the heat from the component just so that it runs more efficiently. So we were thankful enough to receive samples from the Bergquist company, which they are the world's leader in thermal management products, and we use those as a baseline for our research.
So what we did with the Epix Club is that we took the time to research past research by reading research papers. So as many we have been we were really confused when we read this paper. It's manufacturing and characterization of silver nanoparticles-based thermal interface material. That is just so confusing, and everybody was just so confused, so we took the time, we took a breath, just like I did when I messed up, and we read it, and we took it apart, and we were able to find the right equations to find thermal conductivity of these materials. And thermal conductivity is the number that shows how effectively heat is transferred through these materials. So we would want a high thermal conductivity for these thermal interface materials. So through this paper, we were able to see the electrospinning process, our equations, and a little sample of a testing apparatus that we could base our testing apparatus off of.
So, in the first picture, we have a picture of our setup, and we pretty much used a power resistor along with a high voltage and a high current to stress it out so that it'd just be really hot and use it as our heat source. Here is a close-up of our testing apparatus. We have our power resistor on the bottom with two thermocouples around each side of the TIM just to measure the heat transfer through the material, and just a binder clip just to hold it all together. And we also use the Blue Therm Duo program, which I mentioned earlier. And it just helped us analyze our data. And as you can see in this graph, there's a difference between the two lines. I know it may be hard to see, I'm sorry. And that's exactly what we're looking for, because that shows that our TIM is in fact working, and that there is a difference on each side of the material.
So we took the temperature data from the Blue Therm Duo, we put it in this handy dandy table that we made, and we were able to put in the temperatures and the thickness of the material to come up with a thermal conductivity value. And our value for thermal conductivity of the SILPAT K10 reference TIM from the Bergquist company was 1.4. And comparing that to the data sheet on the Bergquist website, their thermal conductivity was 1.3. It's up there, and this paper is at our table in the gym, so you can compare them if you don't believe me. But it's there, and it's 1.3. So that gives us an 8.5% error, which you might think is high, but we think that's awesome because we used a binder clip. So using the things that we had in the lab to test thermal conductivity, we were pretty proud of ourselves.
So Mr. Boyer was fortunate enough to be able to present our research that we've done all year at Purdue University to the National Science Foundation and NanoHub. And our work is also on NanoHub's website, which is nanohub.org, if you'd like to check us out. And we'd see you in the gym later on. Thank you so much for listening.
Mr. Boyer is going to come up, so please come up out here. We would just like to thank Mr. Boyer and all our teachers. I don't know if any of our other teachers are here. Mr. Reichlein, Mr. Boychek, and Mr. Michael. I don't know if you're here. If you're here, then you can come on stage. You're supposed to come. But we just want to say thank you for everything that you've done for us this year. You've introduced us to so many opportunities, and being able to do research at this level in high school, it's been an amazing experience, and we're just so thankful for you and all the other teachers, because your passion drives us, and we just I don't know where I would be without it. I wouldn't be doing engineering, I know that. So I want to thank you. Like giving you a little present. This is from you, from all of us in the Engineering Academy.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys. Actually, at this time, thank you. Don't get this there, you're not getting away that easy.
Okay.
At this time, I would like to have all the Engineering Academy students come up here, just because, and I'm just going to speak for a little bit. I don't want to start crying or anything, but this is the best time of the year and the worst time of the year. It kind of reminds me of a book we had to read at some point in high school, right? This is the best times and the worst times. These students are graduating. They're ready to move on. And I hope in some way the opportunities that we were able to give them here at North Penn High School have given them a little edge when they go to college. And they're in their opportunities now in the classrooms that they're going to stand into. Please, come on out. And we're hoping that these opportunities are going to open up doors for them, because I truly believe that the most important thing that we can offer our children, especially at this age, is opportunity. How many things can they see that they can, and doors that they can open that can change their lives? And so I feel truly blessed to have the opportunity to work with these students every day. I'm so thankful for that, and just congratulations, everybody, and good luck in your future endeavors. Thank you very much. At this time, the real fun now is going to begin. You guys can breathe. We're actually going to go to the auxiliary gymnasium where they have their posters set up, demonstrations and live demos where you can actually ask them questions about some of the research that they've done this year, and just to take a look at the scanning electron microscope that Hitachi and Angstrom Scientific has brought over to set up for us. So we're really excited, plus there's snacks, food, and drinks. So thank you very much for coming out. Thank you.